Alright, tutorial number 2. This is when you first get into the game. The first thing you see is where you are on the map. Like if you zoom out, or if you press M, and notice that the game is paused from the very beginning. You're not gonna get to do anything until you unpause. You can give orders, you can tell stuff to get built. You pick one of these construction ships with a little gear, the 2 icon, you can tell them to build research stations. Honestly, it's easier to just go on the over map, and then you right click on the system and build what you want. It saves you time. And then of course you can pick the scientist. Scientist, it has a few options. You can survey systems, which allows you to explore these nearby systems, which is probably the first thing you're gonna do when you start the game. You can research anomalies, but this should be pretty self-explanatory. So let's just pick here the survey button. I'm gonna hold shift so we can do multiple orders. So there's survey here, survey that, and survey that. Alternatively, you can right click and then survey system, then right click again and survey system, but takes a little longer. So if you're trying to save time, just click on survey and then shift click here, shift click here. That will do survey, and this science ship is gonna, once you unpause the game, they're gonna go by system and explore each of these and tell you what they find. They can find habitable planets, which this one looks like there is one here. And then the construction ship developed the deposits on the map. In your first world, everybody starts with the same thing: 1 mineral, 1 energy, and an engineering deposit. So usually I just go for the engineering first, because you cost 100 minerals unless you have a leader that reduces the cost, which I do not. I have one that makes it cheaper to grab Starbase, which is not bad. And I have one that my ships do more damage. Wow, that's impressive. Okay. And so I pick the construction ship here and tell them to build the research station. And the next thing you see is these 3 icons: physics, society, and engineering research. Physics, you pick one of these. The tech tree is completely your choice, however you decide to do. I just like to pick the ones that increase my research from the very beginning, just to get the next ones cheaper. Because this is my default. Like if those are not available, I just pick the next best thing. But this really, it doesn't really matter what you pick for the researches in the very beginning, because eventually everything comes back in every single one of these researches. So just pick one and see whatever options are. If you need more science, if you need more energy, if you need more minerals, that's what you pick. And next we're gonna just go over here to interface. This is just the basic. I don't have any mods installed right now. A few things. We're gonna go over every little thing here in this interface. First thing you notice is these first 4 icons here on the bottom left. These are the shortcuts. You could just like any other RTS, you can do Control 1 to highlight anything. Say my fleets here, I could do Control 1. So that when wherever I am, if I press 1, it highlights that fleet in particular. You can highlight any. You can bookmark anything. You can bookmark a system. You can say this is group 5, so every time you want to see how your home world is doing, just press 5 and it highlights the sun. You can highlight a planet, Control 2, then you press 2, and then 2 shows up your capital, etc. You can bookmark anything, even star bases, ships, construction ships, science ships, etc. Alright, that's the bottom left. Now I'll go to the bottom right, which my camera is blocking. Hang on a second. We go through every one of these little icons. Main menu, then you have the bottom right, it's just a help menu. I won't even bother using this help menu. Multiplayer chat, if you're playing multiplayer you can talk to players. Then you have the search when you're looking for a specific system. Say I want to look for Alpha Centauri, which is right next door. There you go, it highlights it for me. Then you have go to. Quickly navigate camera to where your home system is located, which is another way to go back. If you click on that, boom, you're home. This one, this map mode, it shows whatever you already built on it. So if you notice in the very beginning, we already start with 10 energy built, 10 minerals, and 3 engineering, because that's what you start with. Everybody starts with this, already pre-developed. And then you can disable it again to disappear. Usually I leave this off. Sector map mode, this is not gonna matter much right at the beginning. Sectors is when you expand beyond 4 systems beyond your original capital. They will not have a sector themselves, but everything that you expand from the very beginning, this can be part of your core sector. You can see sectors by clicking this little button right here, F4, and it'll show you the sector. There's Earth. You can click it to expand and see which production is done, which planet, etc. That's the sectors. That's what this button was. You can turn that off, and you notice that little grayish overlay over your systems. Then you have the hyperlanes. This disables hyperlanes. It used to matter in the early 2016s when you had 3 different types of space flight, wormhole drive, hyperlanes, and warp drive, but now all we have is hyperlane. There are some mods that allow you to have warp drive, but don't worry about it. Next thing you have is the trade route. Doesn't matter right now because we don't have any other star bases, but if you had other star bases, we'll go over that whole trade tutorial over this whenever the map is a little more expanded. Then you have the Unions map mode, which is the default settings. If you have later in the game, once you have multiple alliances, you're gonna notice that this Union map mode is gonna show who you're allied with. If they all have your same color, you can pretty much assume that you are your color, but don't always just assume that, because sometimes they might just have the same colors of you. But you can always check the diplomacy screen, which is under if you press F1, or you can just click this very first icon here, contacts, and then there's anybody that you meet throughout the game, they're gonna show up over here. Then you have the diplomatic map mode. Again, this will show you who you're upset or friends with. Right now, of course, it just shows us as green because we're the only ones, of course, who just started. Then you have the intel map mode. Color based on intelligence available in that map. Well, of course, we don't have anybody yet, so again, another useless right now. Opinions map mode, another one. If anybody that you met, you're gonna tell you if they're either red or green. Green if they're friendly, red if they're enemies. AI attitude shows whether they have their based on their AI attitude towards the player. So if the player is angry, it's gonna show up again very red, and blue if they're friendly, I believe. And this last one, the neighbor map mode, show you which empires are considered to be your own empire's neighbors. This is helpful. I think this might be a new one. I don't remember seeing this. Might have just been added today. Anyway, so that's the bottom left, bottom right, and then on the right side here, that's the outliner. Which when you first start the game, you're not gonna have the outliner right away if you have the tutorial enabled, but eventually it will show up. But you have the list of planets, which you can organize this outliner any way you want it. You can set it so that certain things will show up in any order here. You can leave the situations at the very top, so if something important comes up, like you're running out of energy, they'll show up at the very top. And you can organize this any way you want it. You can move the planets down, so if you want your ships to be at the very top, you can. You just click on this military fleets and yeet it all the way to the top. So from now on, there you go, military fleets show up at the top. Now, the very default setup when you first start the game, it's not gonna have it by planets like I do. It's gonna have it by sectors like this. It's gonna show sectors, Earth, and whatever's underneath it. I prefer to disable the sectors altogether because they're kind of annoying, and I just leave it on planets because the way it puts all your planets together in one giant list instead. It's very helpful. There's all the different things you can do here. Military fleets list your ships. Obviously, situations if anything goes bad in your empire, this will tell you. Sectors, self-explanatory. Branch offices if you're playing a mega corporation, they'll show up a list of all your mega corps in this order. And then there's holdings if you were overlord, armies if you training armies throughout the game, shipyards. That's what you can build new ships. You click on that, click shipyard, build a ship. Civilian ships is the list of your ships here. Construction ships, science ship, and lease fleets if you're playing. If you have the Overlord DLC, you have this lease fleets thing where you can hire mercenaries. And I think that's it for this list. There's another star bases one if you have one that's not a shipyard. That will show up on other additional tabs called star bases. But that's it for this side. And you can minimize this, close it. For a list of planets, you can actually click this button to organize how they're by distance, name, pops, planet class, etc. Alphabetical order, whatever. You can set that up. Next thing we're going to cover here is at the top, the very basics of the game, which is the resources. You have energy, minerals, food, consumer goods, alloys, influence, unity, research, special resources, empire size, invoice, your population, how many star bases capacity are you able to, how many ships are you able to build. This is pretty much standard at the very beginning unless you're playing some horrible devouring swarm or flank purifier. You start with a little higher capacity, but that's for another tutorial. So for now, you notice that everything requires maintenance. Planets require maintenance, ships require maintenance, even pops, buildings, districts, ships, builds, districts, star bases, and leaders. No, leaders used to require energy, they don't require anymore. Yeah, ships, stations, star bases, buildings, and districts. And eventually if you have trade deals with other people, that will require trade as well. Minerals are used for alloys and for building new things on planets and building deposits. Notice that we started with 100, but I already used one. I used 100 to build my construction ship here to grab this engineering deposit. Excuse me. Yeah, every deposit that you drop costs 100 to build. Then you have food, which is required for your pops. Depending on what kind of empire you're playing, you might even need food or consumer goods. The standard people will probably be the most default of the game will require. Alloys is how you build the ships. They're made out of minerals as default, but there are some species called catalytic processing, which you can make alloys out of food instead. Influence is what you use to claim new systems from the very beginning. Later you can use influence for doing commercial pacts, research agreements. You can use it to do espionage. Some of the stuff will, of course, the game is always changing. This tutorial by itself right now is for 3.3.4. I think it's where we're at right now. Unity is what you use for developing the traditions in your Tradition 3. But we'll go over the other tutorial just for the Tradition 3. Research, pretty self-explanatory. Click here to open the things you're researching. Special resources for any special thing that you find throughout the game. The first 3 are common, the next 3 are rare, and the nanites are super rare. Then you have empire size, which is how much it costs to maintain your species. By default, the very beginning, you only have 100. I believe that some other empires have ways to modify that. There's a couple traits and civics that you can take, but then again, that's a tutorial for another time. Then you have envoys used for diplomacy. Your population just shows your population count. Number of star bases, number of ships. So pretty self-explanatory all around. And the last part of the basic tutorial here, which is just this. I did miss one right here, disable alerts. Stuff that you don't want to show up here at the top. You can turn that on or off here by this list. Yeah, anything that you don't want to see here on this outliner, you can just turn it off by clicking on this stuff. And anything that you don't want to show up here is a messenger on the top. If they're a square icon, and I don't know why this is a thing, but if it's a square icon, you can shift and then right click on those squared notifications they show up. Say here I wanted to, if I didn't pick, say I changed this, right? So it shows up over there. If I shift right click this, you notice that it doesn't show up there anymore. But then you have to remember to go and check it. Obviously I don't recommend you do this, but if you do shift right click by accident one of these, you can always just go disable alerts and just right click that. And it will show up there again. Right, and I will go over this left tab on our next tutorial. Alright, so this will be it for the basic tutorial. This stuff here is a little more intense. We're gonna go over in another tutorial.